Record.
Here we go.
All righty. Welcome, everyone. Okay, I am just going to say a couple words to officially begin. As president of the RCC, I want to welcome you to our September webinar for Religion Communicators Council, RCC. RCC was founded in 1929. We are an association of communications professionals working for a diverse group of faith-based organizations. Our members promote excellence in the communication of faith and values in the public arena and encourage understanding among religious and faith groups. We provide opportunities to learn from one another and welcome guests, and our monthly webinars are one of these opportunities. So that is what brings us together today. What I'd like to do before we officially start with our speaker and our topic is just do brief introductions so everyone knows who everyone else is and our speaker gets a foundation for who is attending. So I will begin, and when I say brief, I really do mean brief, but I do think it's helpful for everybody to know who's here. So I am Teresa Faust. I am in Dayton, Ohio. I work for United Methodist Communications, the communications agency for the United Methodist Church, and I am the research manager there. I am going to hand it off to Donna.
Hi, everybody. I'm Donna Frischknecht-Jackson, and it is good to see your faces again. I'm a member of RCC. Well, I have to send in my membership, my payment. Anyway, I am currently the communication specialist with the United Church of Christ. And I come to you from Vermont. So there you go.
All right.
Thank you, Donna. How about Amy? I know you're eating. We're going to ask you to say a couple words.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
My camera's not working today. I am the director of communications at the Tennessee Western Kentucky Conference of the United Methodist Church.
Thank you, Amy. Chris, how about you?
Hi, I'm Chris Carpenter. I'm work at the Baha'i National Center in Evanston, Illinois. I'm a writer and editor, and yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Ryan.
And I am Ryan Coe. I'm the vice president of the RCC, and I'm also the New York-based director of public and international affairs for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
And Jenny.
Hi, everyone. Jenny Heiser. I work for RCC, and I'm based west of Cincinnati over in God's country in Indiana.
All righty. That is everyone. Our speaker today is Ryan Thogmartin. He is the owner and CEO of Disrupt Media. Disrupt Media is a social media marketing solutions firm that focuses on assisting small businesses in creating engaging social media marketing strategies. I think we all could use some assistance in this area. He will inspire and motivate us to think differently and to take action. That is my introduction. And I think that with the words we shared before we got started here with the bigger group, I think you guys are going to enjoy your time and authentic experience with Ryan. So I'm going to kick it over to Ryan and we'll get started.
Awesome, Teresa. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be with you. Like, this is my jam. I've traveled all last week, spoken at a couple different conferences, East Coast and West Coast, and I like interacting and being in front of people and engaging and adding value. But authenticity is at the core of kind of who I am. And I'll get in a little bit about who I am as we go through this in the right time. It'll make more sense than right now. But I want to get a feel. So everybody that's on, how many of you are managing or creating social media content for the organizations that you work for? Awesome. Okay, so a few of you. And I think in all communications, like, authenticity kind of reigns and rules, and having the voice of what you're representing and understanding the core values of that. And I'll get into why you see the way I'm dressed today. You see kind of a little bit of who we are. Just these are actually sound panels. This is not a graphic. There's sound panels in our office. So that is just who I am as a person, and it's who our brand is. Our brand kind of oozes me. Disrupt Media. We like to think differently, be different, help organizations think outside of the box of the norm, but again, in an authentic way that is connected to who you are, because that's why content works is when it's authentic. I fully believe that any brand or personality can have success and through authenticity and relationship. If we can build the right relationships authentically, there'll be connection there. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. I've got a slide deck that I will pull up. I don't love slide decks, but it's hard to do a webinar without a slide deck. So the title of this is Uncommon Authenticity. And yes, I spelled uncommon with a K because a couple of different reasons. If we're going to talk about being uncommon, then why spell it the same way everybody else does? And also my wife and 2 daughters, their names start with a K. So we throw K in there. And if you want to follow me on social media, I am most active on Instagram and Facebook. But my @ name is on every slide, so I would love to connect with you online. So what is authenticity? Authentic living requires pushing the grain, doing the hard work, and holding on to who you're meant to be, even when succumbing to mediocrity standards would be so much easier. How many opportunities do we see brands take to step outside of what is authentic for them to engage in a specific trend, engage in a specific type of campaign, because it's a whole lot easier to shrink down into what trends than it is to rise above and be authentic. So I would challenge you, as you just look at the communication that you have, to look at it. Is the voice that's going out authentic, or is it playing to what the audience really wants? And the secret sauce is understanding what the end user wants, who's going to digest the content, how to give them what they want, but in a way that is authentic to who you are. And I'll give you a specific example. We manage the personal brand for a mega church pastor, and one of the things when he came to us, he said, most agencies we've met with have said, for me to be relevant, I like a cowboy hat and a belt buckle, and I am pretty polished, and that's just our church. I'm not hoodies and Jordans. And everybody that said that for me to be relevant with a younger demographic, I've got to be hoodies and Jordans, and I don't want to do that. That's not authentic to who I am. So we were able to take, his message of the Bible is the truth, take him off the stage in a way that is more authentic and relatable through content, but authentic to who he is on his horse, at his farm, on the ranch, in a cowboy hat and belt buckle. And guess what? There is a younger generation that doesn't resonate with hoodies and Jordans pastor, but they resonate with belt buckle and cowboy hat pastor, and the authenticity shines through. Now, if we would have said, okay, you've got to be hoodie and Jordan to be relevant, the content that he would create would be very unauthentic, very untransparent, probably wouldn't connect. It wouldn't feel natural because it isn't authentic to who he is. So being able to find your lane and what makes you authentic, what makes your organization authentic, and then having that voice and then connecting with the consumer or the end user in that way, there's a secret sauce there. And so I want to give you kind of that blueprint, that secret sauce, and we'll talk a little bit about strategy and how to build a strategy around that. But understanding who you are is really important. When I say when we talk about you, that can be the brand that you or organization that you're representing. It can be you personally in your own content. It could be the communicator that you're writing for. Understanding who the brand is and what those core strengths are. So I'll tell you a little bit about me and how I work this into the content that I create. And Jenny and I kind of go back a few years. She got exposure to me in her previous life. Our company, Disrupt Media, has really scaled in the niche of death care companies. So we manage the social media strategy for hundreds of funeral homes, cemeteries, crematories across the country. Now, I know looking at this picture, looking at me, seeing our graphics, you would not expect that death care is where we are most active, but it is. God called me into death care in 2004. I thought that I was applying to be the salesperson for my father, but it wasn't my father-in-law at the time, but a bank vault company, and it happened to be a burial vault company when I showed up for the interview. So I had sold a company that I'd started out of high school and was ready to get married, and my girlfriend at the time, now wife, said, "Hey, my dad's never going to say yes unless you've got some income." I'm like, "Well, I'm not a 9-to-5er. Like, it's, I'm entrepreneurial. I got to create something." And she said, "Well, go do sales for my dad before, until you figure out what's next." I said, "What does your dad do?" She said, "He has a vault company." I didn't ask any questions. I was 20 years old. I'm like, "Oh, bank vault's a piece of cake. Every bank needs one. People have them in their house." No, I show up and it's concrete burial vault. So that's how I got into death care in 2004. In 2007, after I literally broke everything on the manufacturing side of the plant, my father-in-law finally decided that that was cost prohibited for his business for me to be in manual labor, and started making me do sales calls, which is why I was originally hired. And thus the connection with funeral homes. My background had been in marketing and advertising. And so there was a big disconnect there. And that's how things started in death care. So who am I? I live in Scottsdale, Arizona with my wife and two amazing children, Kyron and Quincy. Quincy's 15. She's actually the one in the right of the picture. And then our oldest is 17. She's beside my wife. And our 17-year-old just published her first book. She wrote a book called Yes to Bless, which is a 30-day devotional for Gen Z. And that is on Amazon and released 2 weeks ago. So lots of things happening, but some things about us. I love Jesus with my whole heart. I outkicked my coverage. My wife is smoking hot, so God bless me there. My kids are amazing. We live in Scottsdale, Arizona. We transplanted here 2.5 years ago from Zanesville, Ohio. So our company has an office in Zanesville, Ohio, and an office in Scottsdale, Arizona, so we can serve all time zones easily that way. I love sneakers. If I was at my home office today, my background would not be sound panels. It would be a wall of sneakers. I love sneakers. I'm known in death care as the guy that will not wear a suit. So we consult with 7 publicly traded companies in death care, and I show up to board meetings looking just like this. I have lost speaking gigs because I refuse to wear a suit. I've been kicked out of board meetings because I won't take my hat off. And it's not a defiance thing. The way that I dress is authentic to who I am. If I showed up in a suit, I would not deliver a good webinar today if I was in a suit and tie, because I just wouldn't be comfortable. I wouldn't be who I am. So this is how I dress all the time. I have a lot of sparkly custom made clothes, and that's just it. So you would never expect death care, but I have learned to be very comfortable losing money, to be authentic, versus making more money to be something that I'm not. So I implore you, when you're in content mode and you're building for your organization, get comfortable with being authentic to who you are, who the brand is, and what those core values are. So that's a little bit about me. The last thing that I'll say is I am addicted to Skittles. I absolutely love Skittles. It is the best candy. Fight me on that. It is amazing. Skittles for the win. So that's a little bit about me. But so how do I incorporate that into content? If you follow me on Instagram, you're going to get some death care content. you're going to get marketing content, you're going to get personal development content, you're going to get a lot of my family, and you're going to get a lot of Jesus. That is just to the core. That is who I am. And that bleeds through our brand, that bleeds through my personal content. And there are times when you're creating in relationship, there's times in what you're creating in relationship to who you are and who you were authentically created to be is as far from the East as from the West. And how many times do we see that? Like, how many times do you experience somebody in person, a brand in person, maybe a CEO of a company, and then you go on social and it's so completely different from what you've experienced in person? And man, that's tough, especially in a religious organization. We have to be transparent. Relationship is key, and authenticity in that is key, and mapping what comes out is also what's on the inside. And so understanding who you are is key in creating content that is super authentic. Also understanding who you are not. And I will give you an example. There is, if you follow like Tony Robbins, Gary Vaynerchuk, some other big personalities that speak a lot, there is psychology around using profanity in a keynote, specifically certain cuss words. Psychology says that when that word is spoken, people stop and now their attention is drawn back. So if you want to make a point, you drop an F-bomb and then you say something really important. And if you look at some big speakers, that is exactly how they do things. And there was a conversation one time with my team. They said, I was speaking at a big funeral conference, about 3,000 people, and delivering a keynote. And they're like, you know what? Like, if you just came out on stage and you dropped the F-bomb, like, people are just gonna, like, it is going to attract so much attention. I said, absolutely not. Like, that doesn't matter. That completely destroys the soapbox and who I have been historically in this profession. If I come out and I do something that is not authentic to who I am, that can work for a lot of other people. It would never work for me. It may capture attention, but it discredits everything that has led up to that point. And so understanding who you're not is just as important as understanding who you are and who your brand is when you're creating. Authenticity is also not just what people can see. It's what we read, it's what we speak, it's who we are behind the scenes as an organization. There's a lot of different things that play into authenticity, but understanding who you are and understanding who you're not are really, really, really important. And when we do a strategy with the brand and we go through the authenticity side of it, we ask them to define who do they believe that they are. And sometimes that process takes hours to go through, really to the core. Who are we? And then also we do the same thing. Who are we not? And we look at competitors and we look at other people in the space and go, nope, it's really easy to follow everybody else versus blazing an own trail. And the own trail and going a different direction sometimes is the long game, not the short-term fix. And a lot of times when it comes to marketing and communication, we really want impact right away versus playing the long game and establishing who we are authentically. And then what do you stand for? This is a big one. Like, what are the core values? I'm sure all of your organizations have core values that you stand for, and making sure you understand who you are as the brand. What's your mission statement? What are your core values? And then is the content that you are creating in line with your core values? And I'll talk about strategy and give you a few little things to start thinking about this when I wrap up, of how you build a strategy around your core values and really understand, like, these are the principles that we're built on. How are we going to build content that's authentic with these and aligned with these core values? Because again, if these are our core values and this is who we are as an organization, then our content and what we put out absolutely should be in line with those core values, and people should be able to draw back to those core values. My kids are part of an online school, and it is entrepreneurial based, Christ-centered school, and it's called Valor Global Online. They've been a part of the school for about 3 years. They've always been homeschooled, and they did some traditional homeschool with through Rebecca. And then when my kids got in junior high and high school, my wife's like, yeah, I don't want to be in charge of transcripts. Like, I didn't sign up to be a teacher. This just worked for our family. So we put them, enrolled them in the school because of the core values and everything that school exuded when we were in proximity to teachers and leadership mapped to those core values. They are very authentic to who they say they are. And it's really great because my kids advocate for themselves and they've learned personal responsibility, and we rarely get involved in a situation. And if we do have to get involved in a situation, it's really easy for me as a parent to go back to the school's core values and go, hey, this is happening and this doesn't align with this one of these 5 core values. So understanding your core values and building content in an ecosystem around that. All right. Anytime authenticity is at play and we are creating and we are in creator mode and putting content out in any form of communication, it is important to have blinders on. And what I mean by this is when we are authentic and we are living the way we believe we should live, and we're creating the way that we believe we're called to create, and we're mapping to the organization, sometimes that's going to come with a lot of hate from outside organizations, especially in a religious setting. I feel like religious organizations take more fire than just about anybody. So you got to have blinders on. And I'll just give you some examples. So there's a picture of me with a client. So very just difference, and that is how I dress. That is how the majority of my clients dress on the funeral side. So some things that have been said: too much bling. You appeal to a very small minority of misguided funeral directors. Rubbish. Please sit on your hands and put them in your pocket. I talk with my hands a lot. So you have to have blinders on. It's very easy to go down a path of, this is where our organization is called to go. This is who we are. This is what we need to create. And then when heat comes from the outside that is unwarranted, it's really easy to get off track. And it's also really easy to retreat. So this is a big one in personal branding. When you are putting yourself out, you become a target for anybody that wants to fire an arrow or throw a rock. And it's really easy to get knocked off the tracks if you don't have those blinders on and understand what the greater good, what the bigger purpose is, and what's the reason that you're going forward with the message that you're trying to deliver. So having blinders on is important. Stay focused, set boundaries, and just make content. I have so many clients that record content and then they watch it and they'll never send it to us. And they're just like, oh my gosh, I don't like the way my hair is, the reflection off my glasses, there was a car that drove by in the background. And, it's really easy to pick at things that get us thinking outside of, nope, I was called to create this. I need to create it. I need to go. So stay focused, set boundaries on what you're going to create, what you're going to tolerate, and then just go create, go make. A great way to put this is document versus create. So when you're thinking about what content for our organization can we create, it's really documenting the process, documenting, some of you now, like, it's valuable for your organization that you're on this webinar today. Are you going to create content around being on this webinar? And here's some takeaways, and here's what we learned about authenticity. There's value in distributing that into who is consuming your content. It's documenting the process. I made a post, Instagram story today. I get asked all the time, like, I travel a lot, I speak a lot, and I document all of that. So people think that I'm just like, how do you have time to do anything else? And so some days I'll just go, hey, people want to know what my schedule is. And I'll get asked, like, what does your typical day look like? Like, how do you create all the things that you create? And, Disrupt is my main business. And I have 4 other companies that my wife and I run as well. And so we're in a lot of different things. And So today I just posted an Instagram story. I got a DM. I'm like, man, when do you ever have time to sleep? I'm like, here's my schedule for the day. And so I'm super transparent with the things that I create, but it's really documenting the process and documenting the journey. And it's all authentic to who I am and what my core values are. And your brands, your organizations can be the same way. So if we're talking about content, how do we make content good? There's a little acronym that we use internally, and then we use this with our clients as well. And there's one more C that we can throw on the end of this, and I'll talk about that in a second, but it's not as applicable to every single organization that we work with. But ARC, every piece of content has to contain ARC. It needs to be attention grabbing. It needs to be relatable to the consumer and the end audience, and it's got to be consumable. I have to be able to digest it quickly. A real-time example of this is I had a call earlier with my team. We try different things each month to get clients to engage. And one of the things that we do is we send an ideas form out to all of our clients based on their strategy. Hey, here's some content ideas just for the time period that we're in coming into, October. And we have about 45% completion rate on these forms that we send out. And so I was analyzing the form with our team. I'm like, hey, we're getting way too wordy in some of these things. It needs to be concise. We have to grab the attention with the idea. It's got to be relatable to the client, but it's also have to be consumable. And we're targeting business owners that are already understaffed. Spending an hour filling out this form is never going to happen. So how do we get more direct and have ARC a part of every little thing that we do, whether it's content we're putting online, that I'm creating, content we're helping clients create, or even internal documents that we're sending to clients? We put ARC into it. It's got to be attention grabbing, relatable, and consumable. The last C, if it's applicable to you, would be call to action. So if you're in you want somebody to take action on something, fill out a form, register for something, you're selling something, whatever it is, the last C could be the call to action, making sure you have that call to action strategically placed in that content. But content at its core has to be attention grabbing. We have 1 to 2 seconds to capture somebody's attention online, which is not a lot. And the reason being, if you think about it, when you're scrolling, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, if you think of how there's a creator challenge that I do when I have a room of people. I gave a keynote to a few hundred people last week, and I had everybody stand up at the beginning of my presentation, do a creator challenge. Just get out your phone and record a piece of content about why you're here today or what you're doing. And so most people, they get their phone out and they're like, hey, it's Jim. Yeah, I'm at this conference today, and gosh, the weather's so crappy outside. I'm glad I'm inside. Oh, and this conference is about, oh, you lost me at, hey, it's Jim. Like, what if it was a cemetery conference? So what if the opening line was, did you know that cemeteries need to market too? Like, that's more of a attention grabbing headline that makes me stop and go, okay, that's different than, hey, it's Jim. Sorry, Jim. I got things to do. I'm scrolling 1, 2. So you've got 1 to 2 seconds to capture somebody's attention. So think about that when, in a communication role. I don't know what your day-to-day is, but I would think email blasts are part of communication, newsletters, if you're sending those out, content that you're creating. Think about just an email headline. What is going to, it's got to be attention grabbing. There was a brand that I used to follow, a clothing brand, and they would always change who the email was from. You can change the from name, and it would be Santa Claus, Rudolph. And I'd be scrolling through just, hundreds of emails Santa Claus, what is that? And I'm they got me. I've opened the email. So what is it in that headline, in the from name? What can you tweak to be attention grabbing that's going to stop and get somebody to open up that email, read that newsletter, watch that video, click on that post? Attention grabbing, relatable, consumable, ARC. All right, so let's get into a little bit of the strategy. So understanding the authenticity, and when we have a good base and knowing who we are, who we're not, what we stand for, we put blinders on, and then now we're ready to create, and we use ARC. And so we got to look at content pillars. And this is very quick. So this is an exercise that we would spend we'll go insanely deep on with clients. But in short, a content pillars will help you with a content strategy, and then what should you create. So understanding a content pillars is a subset of relevant topics or themes that will guide your content strategy. So think about this. What does your audience care about? That's one circle. What does your brand care about? And then your content pillars are where those two things overlap. And again, it's going to take authenticity from your brand to then measure or marry with what your audience cares about. And that's the sweet spot. Finding your voice and your message that's authentic, and at the same time, it's got to be relatable to who's going to digest it. Whether that's an email, a newsletter, a video, a social media post, the content has to marry the two things together. So, for example, with this webinar, gosh, the RCC has to put something together that's entertaining and aligns with their core values. At the same time, give you something that's going to be valuable that you can walk away with. And so what's something that gives everybody the win? And that's becomes the content pillar here. So think about that. And it's really easy to go, gosh, I'm a brand. This is what I want to create. And that's great. And you get your message out, but your message may be falling on deaf ears because it's not what your membership or your community or your consumer want. So knowing your consumer, knowing how they engage, what they engage with, what really resonates with them, and then going, okay, how does that map to what I want to put out? And so, for me, death care content is not exciting. It's not like there's not anything that a funeral home is going to create that is just like, woo, like gets people really amped up, right? So we spend the majority of time with clients because nobody wants to engage with funerally related content. Like if I'm talking about embalming, you're like, yep, nope, I'm out. We don't want to have that conversation. So we spend 80% of our time with a funeral home client creating content that's got nothing to do with funerals, but can relate back to a core value of the funeral. So every funeral home says, well, we will personalize the funeral to, the interest of your family and your loved ones. What does that freaking mean? Nobody has a clue what that means. So we've got to showcase that. And so we've got to do fun things with that client, like a tailgate party. Let's stage a tailgate party. Like, will you throw a tailgate party for a family if they want? Well, absolutely will. Great. Let's do one. We've never done one. I'm like, who cares? But you'll do one. We have to open the mind of the consumer. They want something really engaging that has nothing to do with a funeral. You want to meet their needs, but also talk about personalization. Here's a great way to marry the two together. And we create content around that. So, understanding what your core is and what your business cares about, what your audience cares about, and then finding common ground, that's where your content pillars are going to lie. And that's, again, goes back to authenticity. You got to know who you are as a brand and be firm on and know the brand to be able to create content that can align with those things, but be relatable.
Ryan?
Yes.
Do you have different content pillars for different audiences, subsets or whatever?
1,000%. 1,000%. So like when with our pastor clients, like ministry clients, where we're building out their personal brand, their congregation is pretty diverse, right? You've got 6-month-olds and you got 90-year-olds, and something that's going to resonate with a 25-year-old is not going to resonate so much with a 65-year-old, right? So we build out content pillars based on this is the core focus. Now, with some pastors, it's like, hey, our 55 and older population, that's cool. We don't really need any more 55 and older people. We really need to build the 18 to 35. So let's just focus everything on 18 to 35. And some of that's going to be relevant for this demographic. But yes, building out content pillars in a funeral home setting, it's like there's content pillars around cremation families. There's content pillars around families that are traditional funeral families, massively different consumers. They have different core values. They have different financial access. Their needs and wants are massively different. So yes, building out different content pillars based on the core audience that you're trying to reach. And that's why a strategy is so important. Otherwise, we're just firing things out like, hey, we got to get content out today. Oh crap, I'm supposed to send that newsletter email out for this month. I better throw it together. And we're just scraping together whatever we can. So each one of these pillars also consists of different types of content. So, if we look at it, this could be a content pillar around, let's just say this is a newsletter content pillar. Your organization is great at creating newsletters, and that's part of your responsibility. And now you're going to plug in all the things around that content pillar of newsletters that, we're going to talk about community. We're going to talk about promotional things. We're going to talk about entertainment. We're going to educate. We're going to inspire. Now we're building out a strategy around each one of these subsets of content. So what are we going to talk about when it relates to community? What are we going to talk about when it relates to promotion, entertainment, education, inspiration? And you're building out now this tree of, now it's really easy to create content when you build that strategy out, because you just pull from these buckets and you plug it in, because everything now aligns with the strategy of the brand, the authenticity of the brand, and what the value of that's going to be to the end user. So create content pillars that fall into one of the following categories. So you would have your content pillar, and then we build out these content. And I'm not saying these subset pillars are exactly what would be in line with you. This is just an example. This is how it would work. We would have our core content pillar, and then we would build around these 5 other things and build content around that. So community, education, promotion, and entertainment. And then we would build around those content as well that all align with the content pillar of, let's say, newsletter. This is our content distribution channel, one of them. Any questions on that? I mean, again, this is higher level, deeper things that we're just kind of glossing over.
So I've got kind of a clarification. So the content pillar is the overlap of the slide. Okay, so the content pillar is the overlap. And then the community, promotion, entertainment, and so on are the different types of content for
inside of that pillar.
Okay, for whatever that audience might be. Okay, thank you.
Yes, no problem. So this is kind of what it looks like. If we were going to map it, it's not a straight line. Like content creation is not a straight line. Communication is not a straight line. Marketing is not a straight line. It's creating that real organic content that's authentic to your brand. It aligns with what the end user wants. That gets you exposure. That builds recognition. That builds a relationship. The relationship builds trust. And then that's where you get the results. There's no straight line from A to B. It's a moving target, because again, things change. So like, I mean, I hate bringing up COVID, but it's a really easy example. When we sent content calendars out to all of our clients in February of 2020 or March of 2020, well, those were great editorial calendars, great content. March 11th, everything shuts down. All of that planned content, like all of a sudden is not relevant for what is happening right now. So it became very abstract. We had to go back to the drawing board with every client and go, okay, what are your guidelines? What are restrictions? What do we need to create? If I have to create another video of like where you're going to place sanitation stations in your funeral home, like this is getting really annoying. So, but that is what we had to do, because that was real time, right? So everything that was created up to that point went into oblivion. And now we got to create new content pillars. We got to understand your core values and the authenticity of what you're going to say as a brand through the foreseeable future. And it looks a lot like this. It was just kind of chaotic, but at the end of the day, there was a path to getting results. And a strategy that is authentic allows you to have a path forward to getting the results. It's just not going to be a quick A, B, C, D, straight line, linear equation. It's going to have to be, I heard one marketer say that as a brand manager, you should be like water. I'm like, what does that freaking mean? And the way he broke it down is like water takes the shape of whatever it's around it. So any situation in the organization that would change, the marketing just filled and morphed to be what the brand needed. because it's going to change. Like you're going to have a strategy and a roadmap and a plan, but sometimes based on situations, that plan has to change. And so if you can understand that this is, well, wait a second, we planned this out. Well, sometimes the plans have to change because situations change. But when you have a formula of how you create and you've got a strategy basis and a blueprint of how to do it, now you can apply it to any situation and be able to quickly create an exit strategy to get results. Let's see. And the last one is consistency. When it comes to communication, you have to be consistent. And this is point number 5 in authenticity, consistency. You got to be who you say you're going to be all the time. And you have to create consistently. If you would get off a call like this, be like, all right, this is really good. Okay, we're going to go back. We're going to create a strategy. We're going to do this. We're going to be authentic. And then month 1, you did it. And then month 2, you didn't do it. Well, it's going to snowball. And, you know, it's really fun when I have a pastor say like, hey, I'll be your point of contact for all the content. I'm like, that's going to work for about 2 weeks. And then you're going to have a situation that comes up and we're not going to be able to get a hold of you. You're not going to be available. You're going to be on vacation. You're going to be on sabbatical. Nothing's going to get done. And then it's just going to snowball from there. So consistency is key, and having a authentic message is important in that consistency. You got to be consistent with your authenticity, and you got to be consistently creating. So if you're committing to doing a monthly newsletter for your organization, you got to do the monthly newsletter, and the content has to be consistent. It's got to be authentic, and it can't be like, oh, well, we missed a month, big deal. Because when you miss a month, it's really easy to miss the next month. When you don't post, you know, a couple times a week, 3 times a week, it's really easy to not post at all. When, you know, like when we start missing things, the consistency is the key, because algorithms and social love consistency. So you have to be consistent with content again, and it's got to be attention grabbing, relatable, consumable. There's a lot of variables that play into it, but consistency is key. So here's what consistency can look like. Let's say you posted 1 time a year, that'd be 52 posts a year. If you posted 5 times a week, that'd be 260 posts a year. Great. We can all do math. That's cool. Sweet spot. I'm going to say sweet spot for you is probably, you know, without looking at data and analytics, like 3 to 5 posts a week is probably a good consistency. Like, I'm guessing that your organizations are not like, you know, you're not a concert venue where you've got crazy things happening every single day and there are a lot of entertainment. So, you know, there's not something you could put out every single day that's going to be insanely valuable and get a lot of engagement. So focus on, you know, the core of like, if I can get 3 to 5 posts a week out, and the quality of those is better than the quantity. So quality over quantity. But this is what consistency looks like at scale. So if you posted 1 time a year, and each post on average reached 1,500 people, which, you know, we use that number based off of our collective core clientele, which is about average. Each post is reaching about 1,500 people. If you posted 1 time a week, you'd reach 78,000 people. If you posted 5 times a week, that'd be 390,000 people, just based on averages. It could be a lot more than that, but that's a lot of people. So to put that into perspective, this is what 0 people looks like. That's what 78,000 people look like. That's what 390,000 people look like. So when you're reaching that many people by just being consistent, that's it. We're just being consistent, being authentic with the content. It's attention grabbing, relatable, consumable. 390,000 people, like, that's a huge opportunity to just embrace social at a bare minimum 3 to 5 posts a week, and distribute that content inside the right strategy. You're going to reach that many people, and, you know, think of what that could do for each one of your organizations. So somebody out there, one of you is like, man, our message isn't reaching the people that we want. You're praying for more support, but you're not getting it. And you can't gain any traction. Like, oh, this is great, man. We've tried some of this stuff before. The solution is to just take action. Like, you still have to keep going. You still have to keep moving. Perform a SWOT analysis. Like, what are you doing right? What are some of the things that you're not great at? What are some other organizations that are similar to yours doing really, really well? And you're like, dang, we could probably do that better. Like that's a weakness area of ours where we need to be doing better. What are your opportunities? What are you missing out on from creating the right types of content, the right amount of content? What are threats? One of the things that we do as an organization with my executive team and some of the more creative people on our team, we have a meeting once a quarter where they got to bring ideas that would put us out of business. Like what would put us out of business? And if somebody created this, man, that's really going to hurt us. Those are the things that we should create if they map to the authenticity of who we are as a brand. Like, understanding what your threats are. What could somebody do that would not be like, man, gosh, if this organization did that, that would really hurt us. Great. Should you be the one to create it then? So perform that SWOT analysis. Create a customer persona. If you've never done this, really analyzing who is digesting your content, who are you creating content for, who's that end user, and understand, analyze them. What's the right age range? What are some of their interests? What do they have in common? If you've got big email lists and you've got mobile numbers, like if you're not collecting data, I know data is a bad word and people want to be private with it. Look, if we were really concerned about privacy, we wouldn't have a cell phone and we would never get on Google. Like we've given up the right to care about privacy by just getting on the internet. So everybody can be quiet about that. Grab as much data as you possibly can. Grab email addresses, grab phone numbers, as much data as you can get, because you can use that data. You can upload that data. You can upload a Facebook or email address into Facebook. You can upload a cell number into Facebook, and not for any reasons of like targeting ads or anything like that, which you can do, but just to understand your audience. What else are they engaging with on Facebook? What do they like? What do they not like? Like you can learn a lot from just the data that you upload and can analyze inside of that ecosystem. And Facebook will match a cell phone number or an email address with a profile. So if someone uses that cell phone number or email address for their Facebook profile, Facebook puts that user into a bucket. And then you can analyze, when you have enough people in that bucket, you can start to analyze characteristics. You may find out, like one of the things that we found out for funeral homes, like our content engages 8 million consumers a month over the age of 55. A huge amount of data. We found that the number one thing that people over the age of 55 visit and engage with on Facebook is travel pages. So in that, the average 55 and older consumer in the United States spends on average $6,000 a year on ancillary travel. So how do we take that back to a funeral home and create content? Most funeral homes offer travel assurance. So if you would pass away more than 75 miles away from your home and you have a travel policy, that policy will pay for you to get relocated back to your home and where you need to be, which can be insanely expensive, even if it's only a couple hours away. So when we create content around that, well, that resonates with the core user. It's a value of the consumer, the funeral home, something that they offer. The consumer loves to travel, which we found out through data, and they spend an extra $6,000 a year to do so. Most of the time when they travel, it's over 75 miles and it's to see family. So travel assurance targeted at that consumer makes a lot of sense, right? So capture as much data. If you have an email address, if you have cell phone numbers, you can upload those lists into Facebook and you can learn a lot about your end user to know some of the content that's going to be valuable for them that you can now create. Because without that customer persona, knowing, get as granular as possible. What's the age range? Is it male? Is it female? Do they have kids? Do they come to church 3 times a week, 5 times a week, 5 times a month, once a year? Like, what is it? How engaged are they? Find those things out. The more data you have, and then make your content pillars. Go through that strategy process. Be happy to help you go through a strategy process and break that down. And then you got to create stuff. You got to just make it. You got to create it. You got to document, and then you got to post it. So there's 5 action steps you can take today, leaving this call, that Now you can go back to whoever and say, yeah, it's valuable for me to be on a webinar an hour each month because here's what I learned. Here's the action plan. You can go forward with that stuff. If you treat your brand, so sub out story with brand, whatever you want to plug in there. If you treat it like Fight Club, you're doing a disservice to the authenticity of who you are. It's not a secret. It's not meant to be a secret. What you're doing, what you're creating needs to be distributed. You can't treat it like Fight Club. Document it, distribute it, get it out, engage the consumer, and be authentic at the core. If you get nothing else out of this, authenticity. Be authentic. Don't try to do things that don't map to who you are, don't map to your brand, just because they trend and just because they make sense. Just look back over the last year at the major brands that have suffered massive hits because they tried to do things that seemed trendy and the consumer would, it was a risk. We're going to try it. Well, it wasn't authentic to the brand and it didn't work. So stay authentic. All right. I'm happy to answer questions. Here's some contact information. If you want to connect, if you got any big conversations you want to have. No, I didn't spell my email address wrong. It is .co, not .com. But I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody's got any.
So Ryan, there's a lot of pressure, I would say, I think that's the right word, on denominations to, be cooler to younger people, that, religion and a lot of denominations have that, well, it's for old people, it's not cool anymore.
Yeah.
How would you speak to that? And how do you stay authentic to who you are, but then also appeal to cooler, younger, hipper people?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So here we go. And I love this question. So let me answer a question with a question. Do you believe that the Bible is true? Yes, right? And so if the Bible's true, all of it's true. You don't get to pick and choose what parts are true. And if the Bible is truth, then you as a denomination, what you speak will be truth if you speak from the Bible, which will attract who it needs to attract. So are there things that you can do inside of that? Sure. But again, it has to map. So for example, the big pastor that we work with, again, like there's stuff that, we could have him create that's going to resonate so much more with a 25-year-old than his delivery of why spending $5 on a Starbucks cup of coffee doesn't make sense. Like he can deliver that message and it's going to resonate, but there's a different way he could deliver it where it's not going to make people mad and it's going to resonate differently, but it wouldn't be authentic to who he is. So you have to stay in the lane and you have to understand so inside of your denomination or whatever denomination, like what are teens going through and how do you create in a way that aligns with what your denomination values are? We had a conversation with a pastor in Miami and it came up the whole Target boycott, right? And he said somebody in his congregation came up to him and said, you really need to be telling the congregation that we shouldn't be shopping at Target and we should, all this stuff. And he came to us and he's like, what should I do? And I said, well, how do you feel about it? He said, well, I mean, I know in our congregation, there are about 40 people that work at Target. Like the distribution center in our community is huge. And if I stay up there and I tell everybody not to go shop at Target, I have out of 150 people in our church, 40 of them that are mad and I'm taking money out of their mouth and food off of their table when they had nothing to do with the decisions that Target made. I said, I think you answered your question. It doesn't align with your authenticity of something that you want to talk about. So, this is a roundabout answer, but it's really looking at inside of your denomination, what are your core values? What are you willing to, where's the line? Where can you go to create conversation that's going to draw in a younger audience? And it's, we could sit down in a deeper strategy. We don't have time to do it on something like this, but really there are probably 4 or 5 things that could be created from that denomination that's going to resonate with Gen Z inside of your denomination easily. I mean, there's youth things that you could be doing. Is it a youth camp? Is it, is it bringing in different worship bands and having a worship night that's for the whole church, but you know that it's going to attract the younger demographic? The one of the churches that we work with, they built an entire children's wing that looks like Noah's Ark. Like it looks like an ark. It's huge, and all the classrooms are like different stalls of the ark, and they've got animatronics animals in there and all of this stuff. And I'm like, why did you spend millions of dollars on an ark? And it was, well, if a mom will bring their 5-year-old to church, the whole family will come. And if we can get that child at 5, the percentages and the statistics show that if we engage them here and add value and get Jesus a part of their life now, we will keep them all the way through. They'll stay in the church in some capacity. So it's really understanding, what does Gen Z want? What is your denomination? How's your denomination willing to meet Gen Z and have those conversations? And I don't think it always has to be lights, camera, action. The youth group that my kids go to, we go to a big church. I mean, their youth group's 400 kids, and like they do some really wild, crazy things. Like they had bull riding at their, electronic bull at youth group on Sunday. Like that's not going to be every denomination, every church, but that attracts, that will attract. But again, it's got to align with the authenticity. The church is non-denominational. Like it's fire at will, do whatever they want, and people respond to it. So it's really, what is your denomination? How far are you willing to go? What does Gen Z want inside of your denomination, and then marry the two together?
Ryan.
Yes, Ryan.
So, in my previous job, I was doing some ghostwriting for principals and ghost social media posting. And I'd be curious to get your thoughts about how to preserve authenticity when you're not being authentic because it's not you in the first place.
It's not you. Yeah. So
and your thoughts general about ghost social media-ing in general.
Yeah. I would have a process where that person has to be involved, not creating, but for you to be able to create what you need to create, you have to have some of their voice like in your ear, right? So we do this a lot for personal brand clients that we work with. And there's a strategy that we go through where it is, what are the 5 things that we could ask you any question on that you could feel like, yep, I could answer that. Like that is in my wheelhouse. That is it. And so all of the content that we create for them are inside of those 5 content pillars. And then we give them a list of questions, and we have them just record, whether it's a voice message, their admin dictates it and emails it to us. It's a phone call where we're like taking notes, and then we create the content. So we're using some of their voice at the top level, and then we're breaking it down into specific content pieces. I don't know if that helps you. That's the process we use. And you may be like, I can't get time. Having a set of questions that can be asked, like they're going to have some time involved in it. The process that I use personally, my team, if it's not video content, I create all of my own video content because it's really hard for them to create video with me not in it. But everything else is written by my team, all my captions, but it all goes kind of through me. Like they'll ask me a question, I'll dictate it back. It's not easy for me to write long emails and answer a bunch of questions. So dictation is where it's most easiest for me to digest back. And they're taking notes and they're crafting, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And then they just let me go. Or we'll get on a Zoom call. They'll ask me questions in an hour. And then I will answer those questions. They record it and they go back and watch it, and they're able to create content out of it. So that person that you're ghostwriting for has got to have some say in it. But my team has learned my voice. Like this deck, I'm going to be really honest with you. The deck that we just used, I did not go through this deck until like 30 minutes before I got on with this call. Like my team created the deck, but it's all like conversation. Like we had a conversation about this webinar, and I'm like, this is where I feel that I'm supposed to go. we've got content we've created around strategy, we've got content we've created around authenticity. Let's put it together. And so that person's got to have some voice. And then you got to be really good at understanding. You got to be really good at reading what they're not saying. I think that's the biggest key. Is hearing what's not being said versus what is being said, and then being able to pull that out. I don't know if that answered your question or not. You probably did a lot of that, but
No, that's fantastic. I appreciate it.
Ryan, how do you help an organization better delineate what they are not? Because that, to me, like, most of them get what they are, but then that how do you cut it down to what we're not? Any suggestions?
So we
there?
did this with a church, and we sat in a room for 16 hours over 2 days. So 8 sessions where we literally thought of every question we could possibly ask them, on every taboo topic. I mean, we went through everything, and immediately the things that, we're not willing to talk about that. We're not willing. Great. These are the things that we are not going to address these. We will stay away from them. It's too dicey. It doesn't make sense. So it's really using kind of real world examples, and most organizations are going to have like, I'm not going to talk about that, or that doesn't align with who we are. So for me, there's a company that makes all of my clothes. They are like a rock and roll secular company. And I went to them and like, I really like your clothes, but most of your clothes have skulls on them, a middle finger, and the F word. I love the style, but it's not me. Can we go a different, like, if I just give you an idea of my brand, can you create some things that don't include those, because that's not me? They're like, yeah. And so I gave them a list of like things that are authentic to me, Bible verses, my life verses. And I've got a lot of clothing that has been created by a very secular company, but I know what I'm not. And most people don't talk about what they're not. So if you just said, who are you? Well, we know that. And it's easy to assume that we don't know what we are, but usually what we aren't is opposite of what we are. So anything that falls in this category, that's not who we are. Like, I'm not going to cuss on video. I'm not going to cuss on stage. I'm not going to, like, there's certain things that I'm just like, I'm not going to wear a suit. That's who I am not. So I'm not going to go there. And it's not as hard as what it sounds. And you can look at other organizations and go, I probably wouldn't go down that road. Great, then that's who you are not. Or like, this is the wrong way to do it. Good, we're not going to do it that way. We'll do it opposite of that. That's who we are. That's who we're not. So it's conversation. It has to be communicated well. It's got to be the group of people, and it's got to be communicated. And a lot of times you need a facilitator, again, to be able to read between the lines of what's not being said, because so many times as an organization, we get really, really close to it. Like, I have an outside business consultant that comes in and helps us with our own strategy, simply because our team is so into it that we absolutely miss things when it comes to strategy. And somebody outside can go, man, you're really, really good at this. I'm like, oh, shoot, man, we missed that because we do it every single day. It's so repetitive. We don't see it, which is why it's so valuable to have outside eyes and ears that can see things from a 10,000 foot view, because when you're in it, you're missing a lot. And it's probably going to be easier for somebody else to identify what you're not and start down that path than it is internally being able to identify it, other than just the opposites of what you are.
Is it ever helpful or appropriate in messaging to actually emphasize what you're not, in order to highlight how you're different? Maybe, like, is it ever helpful?
1,000%. It's shock, but 1,000%. And I'll give you an example. We have an email blast going out next week that we've created for funeral homes. And the subject of it is you're not the right fit for us. And the whole email is like everything that we are not, which is what everybody else is. And I don't, if this is what you want, like we aren't going to be in, it's not going to work. You're not going to see value in what we offer. And it's a really good way to weed out. And it makes it kind of irritates people. Like we'll drive a lot of leads from it because there's going to be people like, no, you know what? We are right for you. And people want what they can't have. So yes.
Okay, well, that's helpful, I think, because
It's edgy.
yeah, well, and I
It's
feel like it could be risky, but like where's that
sure.
balance between being risky and then not being authentic? So it's you have to keep bouncing it up against what are your values?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. If it's not authentic to you, it wouldn't make sense to send that. That's so authentic to us that
right.
I mean, if I alienate 90% of the market, that's cool. Like I want to work with the 10% that fit what we want to do and what they want to do. Our goals have to be the same.
So I have other things I could talk about or ask questions about, but I know where people are dropping off, and I want to just do one final. Does anybody have anything else that they want to ask Ryan while he is with us present right now? Okay, well, we have his contact information. I will be probably reaching out, and perhaps even Ryan, if you don't mind sticking around just for a little bit after we officially
not a problem.
Okay. Jenny, do you want to make any final announcements before we stop recording?
Just a heads up for folks, our annual conference, we have a date for that. It will be April 4th through the 6th in Louisville. You've probably seen that in the newsletter. And as we determine speakers, Ryan, try and keep those dates open for us. Big hint. But we'll see. We'll have more information as we get closer to the date about hotel and speakers and topics. So love to see you.
When is the date?
April 4th through the 6th. And it's our 95th celebration of our anniversary. So it will be a fun time. Okay.
Very cool.
And then our October speaker is a gentleman named Stephen DuPont. He is VP of PR for Pocket Hercules. It's an agency that does a lot of interesting strategy and tactics work. And he will be speaking Thursday, October 19th. That webinar will be at 2 p.m. Eastern time as well. You'll see more info on that. So that's it. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
We will be posting this video and his slide deck. So be on the lookout for that in the next few days once I could get that up and posted to our website. So thank you.
Thanks,
everyone.
Can you stop recording, Jenny?